The Moton Mailbag is brought to you by the Robert Russo Moton Museum, located in Farmville, Virginia. The Moton Museum is a civil rights museum focusing on the history of Prince Edward County between 1951 and 1964.
Episode 4 of the Moton Mailbag, Season 2. I'm Leah.
I'm Irene.
And I'm Kanan. Welcome back, everybody. Leah, Irene, how are you all feeling today? It's late October, which means the best time of year is almost upon us. What are y'all's feelings with this super fast kind of whiplash of a year? How's it been going so far?
Yeah, whiplash definitely is the word for it. So you guys, spooky season's almost over. A little sad for me. But Halloween's right around the corner. Very exciting. Have a full day planned of just adventures in Williamsburg.
Full day?
Yeah. Oh yes.
What is still? I thought Halloween was canceled though.
We're not going out per se, but I'm going to see people, and I'm going to the College of William and Mary to visit. So it's a full day for me. Historian asterisk. Yeah.
Trick or treating is canceled.
Yeah.
For the youngins, you know, and the parties for.
Should be.
The slightly older and...
the slightly older ones.
I feel like Halloween trick-or-treating this year, would you go to like your grandma's house, your aunt's house, or like your mom's best friend's house, and that's only places you would go. Mm-hmm. If you even do that.
I'm just going to buy candy.
Smart.
On November 1st.
Oh yeah, get it on sale. That's the way to do it. That's the only way to do it.
The good thing about having kids is that they can't read calendars, well, up until a certain age. And so, like, they don't have to know Halloween's on Saturday, right? I can just say it's on Sunday and just get super discounted stuff. Like,
yeah.
They don't have to know, like, Valentine's Day is Valentine's Day. You can just say it's, you know, January the 15th or whatever, right? Like, it's fine.
Oh my gosh. I just picture your little girl, like, why is everybody else dressed up? What is happening?
Oh, see, that's you got to be like the Manhattan Project, right? Like,
okay.
If you're gonna do this, like, you have to commit and be secretive, and like you have to like keep everybody inside. You know what I'm saying?
No one's going out today.
That's not ominous at
you can
all.
record some people dressed up on Zoom or something like that, and like play it the next day. Like, you got to build it up.
Feasible.
You know, like you know.
Well, sort of like telling your kids, you know, it's New Year's Eve, and you know the clock turns to midnight, but it's only like 8 o'clock.
Well,
you know,
now,
you put
like,
them to bed with a babysitter.
There's no clock turning because like analog clocks are basically gone. Like people don't be using analog clocks like that, and it's like I love a good like analog wristwatch. Like you could feel the tick. Well, that's how you know I don't own a Rolex or anything, but like you can feel it. It's like there's something like it's really cathartic.
Yeah. Yes.
About it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And like having to wind your watch, that's a thing. That's a whole thing.
But what's not a thing is changing the battery. That is the absolute worst experience in the world. Nothing worse than changing a watch battery.
Yeah.
I've broken many a watch just because I couldn't figure out how to change the battery.
It's like Google.
I mean,
please help.
Well, one time I took it to Walmart and like their whole job like was to take the battery out, but they were like, "We're not liable if this breaks." And I'm just like, "That's not a good thing going." Like, that's not a good way to go into this. And then they broke it, so I was like, "Well, that's probably why you have to say that."
Yeah, you knew. Yeah.
But also, that is literally why you're at that counter.
Approached the glass, said, "Can you change this watch battery for me, please?" And I'm like, "We're not liable for any broken property." I'm like, "All right."
That's all.
Okay.
I don't have a good track record, so I guess I'll let you do it. And then they broke it. So yeah, that's fine.
That's unfortunate.
Dislike button. Don't like that.
That's fine. But yeah, as this really weird fall kind of comes to an end of sorts, like, well, yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And we were talking earlier about the weather. Like, it was 80 degrees and it's 50 degrees, and it's like, geez, like, can we just stay consistent? Like, I pulled my jackets out and now I'm sweating.
Yeah, Virginia weather is just a beast on its own.
Yes.
Well, people always say, if you don't like it, just wait a couple minutes. I'm like, well.
You're not wrong.
That's,
You're not wrong.
It's accurate.
There was this day we had all 4 seasons. I was like, there's no way. Like, winter in the morning, nice spring, hot Like if I'm hot, it's hot.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, this is a nice fall evening. I'm like, why? I don't know. How do you dress? How do you plan?
Layers.
I mean,
Layers.
got some heavier questions here today, so
Yeah.
you know it's okay to start off a little light because we got some important stuff to talk. So I think we said Irene is going to get us started with the first question.
So my question for you all today is, why should we be capitalizing the B in black?
Very interesting to get this question, but also very fair because I do think things change quite quickly, and even myself, you know, I mean, I am African American, right? But there's even stuff that I'm just like, wait a minute, when did this happen? Like for me, and to be completely transparent, for me that was, and this is recently, at least to my understanding, like changing from saying people of color to saying BIPOC, right? I didn't know where that came from. I didn't know who got to decide that. Like, and I think that that's at least a fair enough understanding. I mean, a fair enough question.
Yeah.
Like, who gets to pick? Like,
Right.
you know, for black people, you know, from color to Negroes to black, like I think the best way to say that is to let that group decide for themselves, which I think is gradually what has happened. But like, you know, grammar and kind of like stylistic guys in terms of like APA, MLA, whatever, like, you know, so in terms of like editing English language, I mean, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know who gets to pick, but I do know language is socially constructed, so we can at least give ourselves that ability to do. Capitalizing being black for me is something I hadn't seen probably until earlier this year, saying we should capitalize the B in black, and we all kind of have looked at some articles and stuff kind of ahead of this, but long and short, I kind of have mixed feelings about it. I guess I'm slightly more positive toward it than unsure about it, but you know, at the same time, I can see why people who are against it are against it. I'm not going to talk and hawk this entire time because I know other people have other things to say too, but from what kind of I read and entertained, it's an attempt to kind of bring attention to a collective experience, you know, the collective experience of blackness. The only problem with that is that, not the only problem with that, but like being black means different things to different people. Like, it's just kind of complicated, but it's meant to kind of bring, you know, respect and to bring kind of a collective experience and a just to show a collective experience and the kind of significance of what being black is. And I think that's well intended. I just think some of the impacts may not be what were intended. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I mean, some of the articles I covered in style guides were capital B, black, when referring to groups in racial, ethnic, or cultural terms. So, like, if it's black people, but that could mean somebody who is part of the African diaspora that's not African American. They're just black. They may be black Jamaican. They might be black British. Because then that broke down to black versus African American, not the same. I remember this article, or story rather, somebody who was British that was black, and someone was like, oh, you're African American. And they were like, no, sweetie. I'm black and British. I'm not African American. It's not the same. So then...
Well, there was an issue with the Harriet movie, right? Like with the actor she was black and British, and she made some fairly disparaging remarks about American blacks. And it was just like, wait a minute, what is happening?
Yeah. And then, like, the struggle of saying, like, a holistic black experience, black people are not monoliths. Like, everybody's experience is different depending on a host of factors. So it's just like, well, but in referring to the black experience, then you have to define which experience. So it's like, you have the umbrella term, but then you specify. But...
And then that sort of brings in intersectionality with your socioeconomic status and, you know, where you grew up regionally.
Intersectionality. I'm gonna do a shameless plug right here because if you don't know, now you know, episode on intersectionality should be the preceding podcast in this feed. So go back and listen to that, and you can come back and he can hit pause on this one. That's okay. You can go back and listen to that one. But yeah, absolutely, intersectionality is super huge in talking about this because then we can start talking about colorism, right? Like, blackness is such a broad term, which is a problem because, I mean, let's be real, black doesn't it's not real, right? Race isn't real. We created it to. It's like it's not scientific. It's not medical.
Right.
It's you look like this, you're this. The problem is blackness can be a whole bunch of things to a whole bunch of different people. They're very light skinned, white passing blacks, right? And they're also very, very dark. And they're very dark white individuals, right? But like that's the problem of this very, trying to put people in categories because there are people who slip through the cracks. And so now it's like, well, who gets to be black, right? You get to be black, but not African American. Or you're part of the African diaspora. Okay, so if so, which part of Africa, right? That's another part of, why generalizing blackness, like somebody from Algeria is going to look a lot different than somebody from South Africa, right?
Absolutely.
Africa is such a diverse nation or continent in and of itself. And so one thing I was reading in one of the articles was that, well intended, right? Trying to identify some sort of collective experience, but it also creates the implication that, Africa is not as diverse a continent as Europe, right? As Asia, which is not the case.
Yeah, and sort of coming at this from, thinking about what does my white privilege say? It says that I can express and claim that my family comes from Ireland, from Lithuania, from the Ukraine, and I know that there are a lot of black people in the US who don't necessarily have that privilege because it was stripped away from them. And, I think being able to capitalize the being black, at least, like from this perspective of privilege, it says, okay, well, this is something you can claim. It is yours.
Yeah, and another example, very well intended. It's just difficult, right? Like because it's like how do we, and with the heritage tracking too, it's just like there's this thing, the concept of like the Wall of 1870, right? The first time blacks are included in the census, and so that's about as far back as people can trace. So like how often, and then you have to go into like enslaved documents and bills of sale and stuff like that. But it's just a difficult. Yeah, it's a difficult thing, right? But I guess I lean more positive because it at least kind of beckons the question. Yeah. And it gets people talking about issues of African Americans and of black people. I think it advances kind of a narrative, and even if there is some drawback to it, there's not a decision that is going to unilaterally please everyone. Yeah. So it's just kind of like, if this does more harm, puts more good into the universe than bad, then I'm okay with it. And I think that's where kind of I land.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't know I was going to say that until just now. Honestly, I think I was processing in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to process and filter through. Like I'm a black woman, but like I'm from Virginia, so all background.
Yeah.
It's all of it. It's all in there.
Sure.
So it's like, do I need to define myself?
Yeah.
I don't. Not in racialized terms.
Right.
So,
but it's so common. Like they make like, I'm signing up for Facebook. What race, gender? I'm like, why do I need all this? Like, you just really just need my name.
You're just tracking all my information. What?
Yeah, like and now I'm going to start seeing ads for, Cool Blue and like menthols and stuff. Like, why are you not really? Because cigarettes can't advertise. But like, are you just getting this information purely so you can advertise to my perceived demographic? Like, I don't understand.
Marketing is everywhere. Yeah, it's.
At the end of the day, it comes back to the only color that matters is green, and like how can we make money off of you and what you look like and where you live, and that's intersectionality for business. Like how can we cater to each of your cultures and subcultures to make sure you buy our product? Yeah, which is awful, but more or less. More or less. All right. Yeah. Okay. I feel good about that.
Yeah.
I feel good about that.
Because it's a simple question, but man, is it not?
Yeah. It's like, so many layers. All right. I've got the next question. Okay. And I'm paraphrasing because I don't actually have it in front of me. But basically, both of you all, and maybe I'll chime in late, are there examples of some good documentaries? And I'll leave it broad. And, we primarily are history, but like any good documentaries that you all recommend to our listeners?
Yeah. So one documentary that I watched recently, which I think, given the time that we're going into, it's called All In, The Fight for Democracy. And it sort of timelines the voter suppression within the United States and how it's sort of changed and cycled over time, where it started with the only people who had the right to vote were white property owning Christian men, and then over time that was sort of stripped down to white property owning men or white men, who are over the age of 21. And then however time it sort of grew to involve more people, but even today, in 2020, there's still such a huge issue of voter suppression and making sure that people know what their right to vote looks like in their given state. And Stacey Abrams is one of the primary, not actor, because it's a documentary. Yeah, she's, one of the hosts.
In the documentary.
Yeah.
Like the host, maybe?
Subject?
I guess host, yeah.
What is the proper term for that?
I don't know.
Narrator, maybe.
Yeah, narrator. Okay. Yeah, they sort of, go through her life a little bit and how her grandparents, because she is a direct descendant of slaves, and so
I appreciate that.
Yeah, time tracking how her parents really encouraged her and her siblings, vote. It is your civic duty to vote.
Yeah.
You should vote because there are people who don't have the right to vote. So I think that one's really interesting, especially given that we are in an election year right now and how quickly things are coming up.
What platform is it on?
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime for free. So It's definitely something I would recommend. And then the other documentary, it's more of a docu-series, really. It's about maybe 6 or so episodes, 45 minutes each. So it's called Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin story. And I found it to be really interesting, sort of thinking about the timeline of it and how when this was going on, 2011, 2012, I was a kid in middle school who did not have any idea about what was going on. And that is because of my white privilege. I didn't have to worry about, my mom coming home and saying, all right, Irene, I need to talk to you and your brothers and we need to have a chat about what to do when you leave the house. So for me, it was very informational on just sort of learning about the Black experience in the US of being a young teenager. And then also so it talked about, how that really was one of the main catalysts for the Black Lives Movement, and the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement came on and they were talking about that and how that really just shot off what would become, something so internationally known. And it talked about stand your ground laws and how the NRA has been a big proponent in a lot of states of these laws that really, directly target, or I'm not sure what the right word is, but they disproportionately affect Black
even
lives.
If it's a target, it's certainly disproportionately impact. Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting and informational, and it's definitely something I would recommend to any of the white listeners out there.
Netflix?
No, this one is on Paramount Studios website. So if you have any cable login provider, then you just use that login information and you can watch it for free.
What about you, Leah?
So I watched 13th. It's on Netflix, right?
Yep.
And it's about the 13th Amendment, and it talks about the clause where slavery is still allowed as a form of punishment, which has turned into the prison industrial complex. This documentary had me stressed because it doesn't make sense how it happened, because I didn't have that background from like late 60s, 70s, 80s. Then I was like, oh, okay, situation. So it's one you watch, but then you call someone and be like, hey, I need to talk you through this so it makes sense to me. It was a very long phone call.
Yeah.
Shout out to Lisa.
Yeah. I had to watch that one a second time.
Yeah.
Because I watched it again and I was like, okay, this makes more sense now, and I picked up on some other things and probably watch it a third time.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a lot in it, but it's so good.
Absolutely. And like, I haven't rewatched it because I have to be in the right headspace.
Right.
Yeah.
Because like, I took notes while watching it, and I haven't like reread my notes because I was like, all right, hold on. I know you're upset, and this because it's still legal. Slavery is still legal, and it's still happening. People don't know that.
It just looks different. I mean, that's how it all
it's a different name.
You know, after enslavement, after Brown v. Board, I mean, all those issues that were fought, you know, segregation still exists, right? It just looks a little bit different. You know, we have to make sure we're staying vigilant on these issues. And the 13th, I think, is, you know, after there are two things, if you could only absorb like two pieces of content at all related to kind of prison industrial complex or, you know, the struggle of African American and, you know, in the U.S., 13th, you know, for a visual medium, and then the new Jim Crow. I would also recommend to read, you know, written kind of form. I think those are probably two of the best, kind of concise. You know, it's a lot more than that, but they do a good job of breaking it down.
Because I mean, it's overwhelming, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's infuriating because it's like, oh, that's why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. But it's also like motivation and opportunity to be like, let's talk about this. Let's have these uncomfortable conversations because we're not going to get better or change if we don't. If we put up those blinders, it's going to be more of the same. And
for sure.
why? Make it better.
Yeah. Yep. Something related, but I guess at the same time not related, but like just the notion that like criticism of an institution or of a government or something like that equates to I had words, but now I don't. Equates to like
disloyalty.
Yeah, disloyalty or like I'm ungrateful. Like I just have never gotten the connection that like criticism. Because to me, you criticize something to make it better, right? Like
it's care.
Yeah,
it's
constructive
accountability.
criticism.
Like I value this institution enough to criticize in order to help make it better, right? Like I just have never gotten the connection that like I'm ungrateful because I'm complaining about like no I want us to live up to our grand ideals of all men being created equal and with liberty and justice for all, but instead of it being liberty and justice for some, like I just have never gotten that connection.
Well, and you know, sort of thinking about it from the perspective of an athlete, you know, if your coach stops telling you what you're doing wrong, if your coach stops, you know, giving you that constructive criticism, coach doesn't care. Yeah. You know, no one wants their coach not to care. You know, I think it's the same way.
Absolutely.
You know, you show you care about your country, about your institution, about your state, your government, you know, what have you. You show you care by providing that constructive criticism, saying, hey, this is an issue and we need to fix it.
Right. That accountability.
Let's think about how we can make it better. That's loyalty in my eyes.
Right. Being willing to be like, look, we gotta fix this. Yeah. Because if we're gonna talk about it, we need to be about it.
Yes.
So let's work on it.
Absolutely.
Because it's so frustrating, like, to teach civics, to teach government, and kids raise their hands and say, but that's not how it works. We know, we're working on it. It's a look, work in progress. Work in progress.
Well, I mean, kids at school learn, you know, about these ideals. I mean, kindergarten, they're learning about the golden rule, and, you know, treat others how you want to be treated, all that other stuff. And then somewhere we unlearn it, and that's kind of the because kids get it. Like if kids ran the world would be so much of a better place, right? Because kids know how to share for the most part. Sometimes they don't want to do it, sure, but like they know how to conflict resolve better than many adults. In short, we should really listen to kids more. For me, I've got two of them, sort of. First is the Loving Story documentary, which is a PBS documentary that came out probably in about 2007, I want to say. I could be wrong. But it's about an hour long, which is good for my attention span. But it talks about the Loving v. Virginia Supreme Court case. Honestly, I think it does a better job telling the story than the film does. I know I don't want to make anybody upset with that. I think the film is a bit too long. But the documentary, in a very concise way, really walks you through the case, through the briefings and such, and I think it's really interesting. And it's very accessible because it's PBS. So go look that up. You can just Google it. In theory, you'll find this. It's called The Loving Story. The other one that is pretty easily accessible, but more Moton-centric, is Ed Ayers, historian. He does a TV show for PBS, The Future of America's Past. And in season 2, there's an episode featuring Moton. It's called School Interrupted, and it kind of walks you through the general kind of outline of the Moton School story and what that looked like, and talks about school closings and such. Really interesting resource, really free, kind of open to the public, and there's some really cool kind of educational resources based around that episode as well. So if you want to go to Google or I guess to Bing or whatever search engine and search Future of America's Past, School Interrupted, and you'll see the Moton School Story presented there.
All right.
All right, guys, last question. What has been a day that stands out to you at Moton?
I think the day that, sort of stands out to me most would probably be the day when the first tour came through after I started, and it was a group of students from Longwood. And that day I was shadowing you, Kanan, sort of trying to figure out what is it like to actually give a tour. And, that really just stood out for me because I am a college student, but here I am on the other side of it, and these college students are looking at me and they're like, oh, you work here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do, but I'm also one of you, so there's this sort of like odd juxtaposition of like, oh, this is kind of odd. I am your age, but I am here standing at the front of the group,
And you have an email address.
Yeah, a whole email address.
A whole email
Official.
address here at Moton. So that was just, it was just sort of odd, having everything, I guess, sort of come full circle.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have 1 foot in the professional world and 1 foot, like, you're still undergrad, right? Like, there's that, like...
Yeah, so, I'll, go back to college, and then I will have had some decent work experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting.
Solid.
Yeah.
I was going to say something else, but now I thought of exactly what I want to say. July 30th of this year was very, very weird.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
well, weird. 2020's been weird, but, we closed to the public in March of this year, March the 3rd or something like that. And we hadn't seen anybody. And so when we made the decision that we're going to reopen to the public on June the 30th, it just was like, there's actually going to be people in the building again, and it won't just be staff. And it just was, a sigh of kind of relief, of exasperation, but also of slight concern, just because, the pandemic is still happening. But like yes, people finally get to be back in the museum, and we get to continue to tell about the story in a physical sense, just because there's such a big sense of place being here in Moton, in the space, in the room, and in the walls within which this history happened. But it was just a weird experience because you don't know what was going to happen, or people were going to comply with the masks, and people were going to feel comfortable. But honestly, for the most part, visitation at the Moton has been pretty comparable for what it would have been this time last year, just with slightly less group tours and then no rentals. But visitation-wise, it's been steady, and and the guests have been very compliant with masks and and social distancing and all that stuff. So it's been an interesting experience. But I think if a specific day had to stand out, June 30th definitely stood out because we finally reopened.
Yeah, it took a while for me to get used to the door opening again.
Yeah.
It's like, why is the door open? Because Moton is open. That's why. Oh, okay.
Yeah, between March between March and June, the door open, we're just like, who's
right,
here?
exactly.
Who's here? And it's like, ding, ding, like, oh wait, no, we're just open.
Check the phone, like, oh, what time is it? Oh, yeah.
What about you, Lee?
So, I guess a day that stands out, 2 things. First day would be my experience with Virginia Children's Book Festival. It was my 2nd day. And I was like, okay, Moton, stair system, please don't mess up. I don't know how to work you yet. Please don't. Okay, chaos is happening. Oh, the bus is here already? That's great. Okay. Hi guys, welcome. I'm glad you're here. We're gonna go ahead and get started. It was definitely a trial by fire, but I learned a lot that day and just how to manage groups in the auditorium space. And then another day that stands out to me was when we had the kindergartners from Prince Edward Elementary come visit. I'm like, oh my gosh, the babies are here. You're so little. Hi guys, good morning. Good morning. And they're just all jazzed and excited to be here. I met them at the door, and this kid was like, this is so exciting. I'm like, yeah, yes it is. I'm so glad you're here. And then they're so chatty. They just want to tell you about their life story. I'm like, yes, give me your information. Let's talk about it. we do our worksheet as well. So let's talk about that. But if you want to tell me about your brand new cat, you can. That you got your nails painted, that's exciting. I haven't done mine yet. And it's just, because they're little and they're excited to be with you and just be in the space. Something and new. It's all exciting. I'm like, yes, it's, when I'm having a bad day, that's what I think about. Because,
more reason to let kids rule the world.
Honestly, that's what we did. I would be totally for it. Like kid president. Well, I don't know what happened to him. I guess he's tween president now, but you know, he was
put him back.
Inspirational little kid. Alrighty, anything else from either of y'all?
I think we're good. That was solid.
That was solid. Yeah. No, you say that, yeah.
Please go vote.
Vote. Whether your civic responsibility.
You are sending in your ballot or voting in person early or on election day.
When you're listening to this, election day will be tomorrow.
Please vote.
So, yeah, go vote.
Vote.
All right, that's it for the Moton Mailbag. Send your questions to info@motonmuseum.org. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.